We will now bleed and fade into the dissolving of the body, and here is the motion. First of all, there is the inhale, and now the exhale. You will see that the inhale is much faster than the exhale, because the exhale can only go according to how strong the diaphragm is. Now we have gone into taking the body away to make things clear for you. You can really see how the rib cage swings now on every single inhale, and we'll keep the motion going. Also, you will see that the part that is less faded at the top is where the lungs spill over the side of the diaphragm, what looks sort of purple. The bottom part is the diaphragm, and the diaphragm goes clear up inside the rib cage, but the lungs spill over the side of it. And you can see how the diaphragm swings that rib cage on every single inhale. Now we're turning to the side, and as you see on the side, you can see very clearly how the lungs will slide over the side of the diaphragm. And the very top line in the middle is how far the diaphragm rises. And you can also see now how, with where the ribs are attached in the front of the sternum, it affects how they're attached at the spine. And they swing like on a bucket handle. And even the spine is moving, which you'll see clearer as we then dissolve further. Again, let me tell you how important it is to understand how the diaphragm swings the ribs, the spine, and how it affects the shoulder blades. Now we've dissolved and taken out the lung and the heart. You are only seeing the diaphragm now to really have a complete understanding of how large this muscle organ is and how it is the main pump of the body, the heart being the secondary pump. And if the diaphragm weakens, it doesn't rise as high. This is maximum motion that you're seeing now. And with this maximum motion, all of the motion of the rib cage, and you see how little there is at the top, the shoulders stay almost totally passive. This is because the largest part of the lungs is at the bottom. The lungs are like pyramids. And now we have taken that away so that you can really see the skeletal alignment. People with all kinds of skeletal problems, scoliosis, osteoporosis, often have it because they are not getting, along with increased circulation and oxygen, they are not getting the motion and the looseness of the spine, which affects the shoulders, affects the hips, affects the pelvis, affects the neck, and the jaw. All of this comes from how the diaphragm moves inside the rib cage, and how the diaphragm moves inside the rib cage is totally dependent on its strength. And just because the human creature has gotten on his hind legs, so to speak, and is in an upright position, the diaphragm is always working against gravity, so it is very precarious. Now we are turning to show you how this affects the spine. You can see very, very clearly. And for people who have all sorts of back problems, and they will go to some practitioner who will say, oh, well, this vertebrae is out or that vertebrae is out, we'll have to put this one in. If the diaphragm has not exhaled enough to get enough air out of the lungs so that you have a flexibility, when they apply pressure, it can go in one place and out another. But with the motion of the diaphragm, everything stays loose, each vertebrae, and actually people can gain an inch in height by having this kind of motion with the spine. All the result of how the diaphragm moves inside the rib cage and how it affects not only the circulation, but also affects all the internal pressure in the body. Because if the diaphragm sits low, you have pressure in the abdomen.
Clinically, physicians taking care of people with pulmonary disease feel that they can do nothing to directly affect the diaphragm. They treat infection of the lungs to minimize the obstruction of air and let the lungs collapse as much as they can and pull the diaphragm up. Most of the standard exercises are in the manner of calisthenics, not the very subtle method that Carl Stough uses, in which he works with ongoing spontaneous breathing. To me, that's one of the major points of genius of what he does. What Carl does is, I feel, is he changes the coordination of the breathing from abnormal to normal. He then affects a degree of exhalation that has not previously taken place, with resultant rise of the diaphragm and descent of the ribs. Now, from my observation in people with severe pulmonary disease, there is an extreme tendency to return to the abnormal discoordination or asynchrony of the breathing muscles and sustained elevation of the chest and sustained flattening of the diaphragm. But Carl teaches them a style of life without extreme exertion, avoiding other stimuli that tend to cause the reversal to the old abnormal pattern of breathing, and also some aspects of major somatic or physical self-discipline to preserve what he has created. I was fighting, having been educated with the classic concept of pulmonary disease, that the ballooned up lungs of the emphysematous patient were ballooned up for the rest of his life, as I mentioned earlier. And when Carl showed that that was not so, I tended to resist. Tended to resist is probably a masterpiece of understatement. And we never came to blows, but my ego was crashed week after week after week as he demonstrated that the classic thinking was wrong.
Here is a rare picture of one of the most important things of breathing in the body. If you can follow the two yellow lines that go from the top to along the side of the heart, they are the phrenic nerves, and they spread out over the top of the diaphragm like the roots of a tree. And the brain monitors blood gases, and when the body needs oxygen, it sends electrical impulse down these nerves to the top of the diaphragm, which causes the diaphragm to descend. This is why we can say that every inhale is a neurological reflex. People are doing it wrong. They are continually saying, take a breath, and grabbing with all the accessory muscles, when here is this absolutely incredible system that was all designed to take care of the entire system. These are X-rays of maximum inhale and exhale. On the left is the maximum exhale, and you can see how little air is left in the lung, how the ribs fold around the diaphragm, and how high the diaphragm sits inside the rib cage. On the right, you have a maximum inhale. You can see now the lungs are full of air. You can see even the heart much more clearly, and you can see the line of the diaphragm, and the ribs are much more horizontal. And, of course, the diaphragm, as it goes up and down, massages the heart. On the next sequence, we have the diaphragm on the side, a side view showing maximum exhale. And again, you can see how narrow the body is, how straight the sternum is and the spine, and how little air is in the lung. And on the right, we have a maximum inhale. And you can see the difference in the width of the body, and you can see how large the lungs are. Most people don't know or have never known that you have more lung space in the back than you have in the front. And you can see very clearly how much air you are getting in and out of the body. The picture on the left is from the front of a maximum exhale, as you saw before, and the one on the right is the maximum exhale from the side. You can get a contrast then of the body completely on the maximum exhale. The maximum inhale is a front view on the left, and you can see how horizontal the ribs are and how much air is in the lungs. And on the right, you can see a maximum inhale from the side view. And again, you can see the volume of air that's possible to turn over in the lung. You are now seeing this incredible process known as cinefluorography, which is really the actual diaphragm inside the body being photographed, put on film by this process known as cinefluorography. The diaphragm is now off the top of the screen. There it comes in the inhale, and you are looking at the right side. And you can see how the ribs, so much air is getting through the lung that you actually see the crisscross of the ribs from the front to the back. There the diaphragm again has gone off the top of the screen. When these films were first done at St. Albans in New York, doctors marveled at this process. It had never been seen before, and to this day there are no films existing like this. We have the only ones. Again, the diaphragm has gone off the top of the screen, and again you will see it reflected into the inhale, and there it is. You will also see, if you look on the far left, the ribs. Now we're on the left side, and the black, or the beating part on the upper left corner, is, of course, the heart. And the heart, of course, is the secondary pump after the diaphragm. The diaphragm turns over the air and gives you enough oxygen, which then the heart pumps through the body. You can again see the diaphragm rising on the exhale now. And, of course, the top is a dome, so according to how the light hits it, it almost fades away, just as if sun were hitting a dome on a building. Now we went into the complete inhale, and again, you're rising on the exhale. And if you look on the far right, you can see the ribs, how they move in relationship to the diaphragm, that every time the diaphragm descends in the inhale, the ribs swing out. There we go. And they swing out. Now they're swinging back in on the exhale. Again, we are back on the right side. Here you can see the ribs very well, particularly on the left side. And now we are moving the camera because the diaphragm before had so much excursion that it was going off the screen. So they now decided they would try to move the camera. There we go again. We move the camera down to get the full extent of the inhale. And again, you can see the diaphragm rising on the exhale, going toward the top, and you certainly can see the ribs very well now. Yes, there's again the inhale, and it's rising for the exhale. Now we're back on the left side. And again, there we are, and we're moving the camera again, so you can see very well on the right side of the screen how the ribs are moving out on that inhale when they slide the camera down. There it is. Tremendous motion. Now we're rising up. Now this is the largest amount of motion ever measured. This is a little over 12 centimeters of motion. Normal diaphragmatic excursion is considered to be between 6 and 8 centimeters. Now you are seeing minimum diaphragmatic excursion. This is an advanced emphysema patient. That is the end of the road as far as the respiratory diseases and problems. The diaphragm is deteriorating. It is now getting some paradoxical motion. As you can see toward the center of the screen, the diaphragm is going up on the exhale instead of down, as it's going down on the left, and all of the ribs are going backwards. In other words, the ribs are going out on the exhale and contracting on the inhale. Here he is trying to do fast breathing as you would if you burn more energy, like if you were walking. Now, I have to say that this happens even with people who don't have emphysema if they overreach themselves. Here you have the left side. The left side, again, you have the heart up at the top. You can see the shadow, and the black part is the lung. No air is getting through at all. And the diaphragm is a little better here on the left side than it is on the right, which is quite unusual. Usually the left side of the diaphragm is weaker because it is constantly moving the heart. You can see, though, the paradoxical motion of the ribs. The ribs are contracting on every inhale rather than expanding. So he would be grabbing breath in the upper chest in what you would call accessory breathing. Now, as he tries to go with breathing faster as if he were walking, now you can really see more diffusion and how weak the diaphragm really is.